Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, January 16th, rather. It's Wednesday, January 16th. It's the 2019 semester, and this is corresponding with the lesson 4 of level 1, the recorded lessons that are unteachable. So the topic today, and I have to give a huge disclaimer, I recorded the lessons on Teachable about 6 years ago at this point, which is 2013. It's pretty amazing. And I titled the lesson Organic and Inorganic Beings. And in choosing those vocabulary words, I'm a cultural outsider. If you don't know my work, I'm a galactic walk-in. So, I'm using English. This is very much like using a foreign language. I chose those vocabulary words to describe what I was trying to get across. And in subsequent years, I've seen how the word inorganic or organic has been applied differently to mean different things. So I actually wrote a disclaimer that I put up on that lesson for anyone who watches it. So I just want to make really, really clear. I am not a transhumanist at all, and I am not advocating in any way for any one of us, my audience, anyone who's here watching this. We've got physical, organic, multicellular, beautiful bodies, and we eat and we drink. We drink like here's a good vegetable juice, right? Wonderful. We eat, drink, we metabolize. We're not supposed to open ourselves up to have anything else ride along inside of us. That's a big one. Like not some kind of supposed ascended master, not some kind of religious figure, not some kind of spiritual being. If this is your instrument, if this is your guitar, you are supposed to play your own music. You're not supposed to have someone else holding your hand and strumming for you. And this is like your mind. It's about having your own thought structure, having the ability to direct your own consciousness through life, because your life is your artistic expression. It's your canvas. So yeah, if you take responsibility for what you paint, it's because you painted that stuff, not because some ancient religious figure or modern religious figure or anybody else who's coming inside of your mind and is saying, oh, do this, think this, make your artwork look like this. So that is really, really big. So what my intention was in originally choosing those two words, I defined the word organic to mean that we have different levels of self. So this is the 4th installment of the class that we've been going through, and I've talked about extensively what are the layers of reality, and showing you here on the lasagna and also on various different diagrams, the idea that we have the red is the physical, and that is just one layer of the multi-layer layer cake of you, of the recipe of you, that we also have all of these subtle or finer bodies. And also, where's my little yellow sculpture? Sorry, I'm ducking off camera. This little yellow sculpture that represents the shape of those non-physical energy centers or bundles of time that are known as chakras. And I'll show you, on some of these images that I have over here, how there's an interplay between the physical and the non-physical. So in choosing the word organic, I have been intending to describe the physical aspect of self. That like you've got cells and they eat and they metabolize and they have energy and and energy meaning like energetic output, like a caloric output, and they have metabolism byproducts, poops and other things that have to come out, and that's one aspect of yourself. And then you have another aspect of self that is made purely out of, we could call it thought energy or consciousness or time, possibilities and probabilities. It has a metabolism, but it is not the metabolism of eating regular food and pooping in a regular toilet. It is a metabolism of energy flowing. Here, like I use this all the time, energy flowing, where energy flows. So there has to be energy input and there has to be energy output. And there are byproducts. So wait, let me grab my little magic trackpad. Sorry that I'm ducking over here. Hold on a second, guys. Because now I'll be ready to go to the screen share. So I'm going to talk about energetic anatomy of what these parts of your body actually look like. And I have my, my whole, all of my extensive notes. Go to screen share. And make it so that you can see my face. There we go. So one of the first things is this drawing over here. Wait, maybe you can see this drawing over here. Nope. There you go. Got two drawings, one which has color and one which does not have color. And they are both very accurate and they both show different things in terms of the way that the chakras or energy centers are arranged on your body. There, now you should be able to see both of them. So the idea is that we have a partnership. The whole, what I intended when I recorded that lesson 6 years ago was to describe a partnership in terms of moving through time between physical aspect of self and non-physical aspect of self. These are both aspects of self. This is not to say that the human form that's in these diagrams is different than the non-human shaped form. Let me get a pen so that I can draw and scribble here. So this figure that is the white figure, that I call the anthropomorphic or human-shaped form. And that form is usually what we identify with as self. Like, that's me. It's shaped like my face. I have 2 eyes, 1 nose, and 1 mouth. But all this other stuff that I'm scribbling on in white is also self. And that is a big expansion of identity and also of responsibility. These are all the aspects of self that are thoughts and feelings and bridge or connection or conduit to higher dimensional, less dense realms. And those aspects of self are just as much you as the physical self that's here, like, eating a slice of pizza or eating a hamburger in the physical reality. In the ideal formation of the world, the way things are supposed to be, we have a perfect interplay between these two aspects of self. Your physical self, the figure that is highlighted in white, and all the rest of the rainbow stuff that's around that figure has to work together like partners. I'm not sure if the grammar was correct on that sentence, but you know what I'm talking about. These two things have to work together. Here, I'll make this little gesture. We have to integrate these two things, physical aspect of self and the non-physical aspect of self. You literally cannot divorce these two things and have them both be in existence. This is big emphasis here. If you take away all of the stuff that I'm scribbling on right now, all of the non-physical aspects of self, and you just have the physical body, what you have is a corpse. It is not animated. It's not moving. It is not imbued with energy and consciousness and potentials for future existence. And in the same way, if you take away the white central figure here, that is the physicality, and you just have the other stuff, you don't actually have stuff. You just have the potential for a person. You have all of the non-physical aspects of being, but not the physical aspect of being. And here's why that is not a sustainable existence, because the physical aspect of being actually has the mouth. I am the owner of the mouth, and the food goes in the mouth, because this whole entire system here requires energy to go into it. It's not like a terrarium where, you have a bottle. Here's I'm drawing a little bottle that has a cover on the top, and plants grow inside of here where I'm making white squiggles, and you never have to add anything to it. That's a terrarium. It's a closed system. You, at this moment, are not a closed system. It means that you got to have something come inside in order to be able to nourish the system. And the aperture through which stuff comes inside is physical. It's physicality. So even if we are moving into being, light eaters without eating physical food, or the intermediaries of apples and bananas and other stuff like that, the aperture is still a physical aperture. I got that light coming into my physical body. So because what I'm trying to say here is that there should not be a power struggle. I'm imagining that there is an ego-based power struggle occurring between the physical body self and the owner-operator of that self, and the non-physicals, let's call it, and that there's I want you to do this, yeah, but that's dangerous to me, but I got to go buy toilet paper at the store, and I got to go eat stuff, but I want you to do this thing that you consider to be completely impractical. There's not supposed to be this type of conflict between these various aspects of self. The entire spectrum of you is you. So you're supposed to work together with yourself in your body. If you're healthy, you do not have a conflict between, let's say, your heart and your lungs. Your heart's not me, I need all of the energy for me. Lungs, no, I give you nothing. You're chopped liver. No, your lungs are I'm important too. Your entire body is important. You have to make sure that your body cells are not in competition with one another for your various biological resources. So that's the whole idea. That doesn't mean that all parts of your body have the same needs. So your tooth has a different need than your heart or your knee or your elbow or your butt, whatever. These body parts all have different nutritional and energetic needs. So back to the idea of your physical body versus your non-physical aspects of self. These have different needs. Your physical body requires physical food, physical nature, physical food, water, and heat and other things that sustain it. And the non-physical, pure consciousness aspect of self also requires sustenance. It requires love, which is a real type of food. And it's also love is a tone. So when you sing the right music of love as you move through time, you're literally emitting a food that is a food for the non-physical aspects of yourself. I will say that again because this is really important to emphasize. When you are able to dampen down the constantly verbally chatting, inner mind, the constant verbalizations that make us not move through time emitting that love tone. Like if I'm moving through time and instead I'm thinking, I got to buy blah, blah, blah at the store and I got to go here and I got to scrub the toilet, then I'm not emitting the love tone. And that means that I am not feeding my non-physical aspects of self, my chakras, with this energy. And when you feed them with that energy, they literally spin more. Like if you feed me with a lot of energy, you know what happens? My arms and legs move more. I have more energy to do stuff like walk around the neighborhood. If you feed me enough, look, I can run a marathon. Same thing with the chakras or non-physical aspects of energy on your body. If you ingest enough love, which you do when you practice mindfulness or meditation, that is an intentional dampening or stilling of the verbalized chatter in the mind so that you can actually connect with the love that we are being given all the time by the time field. So we are literally being offered like on a platter by the cosmos. Here's a lot of love. Here's a lot of love. Like, you hungry? Here's some, have some love, have some love, have some love. And that is around us all the time. And the thing that makes it so that we can't actually get the love inside of us effectively is constant mental chatter. That's from an implanted, hacked human operating system. It's not the way it's supposed to be. It's, a huge impediment. So what we, ego self, attempt to do is say, hey, talking mind, quiet down for like 5 minutes so that I can actually absorb some of that love that is being given to me all the time. And of course, we're not supposed to just do it for 5 minutes. We're supposed to do it for 24 hours. We're supposed to move through our day constantly emitting the tone of love and also absorbing the tone of love, because that's what love is. It is an equal giving and receiving, a reverberation. It's rapport with the other musicians. You're like, I'm grooving along and I'm sending out my grooves and I'm receiving all the grooves from all of you. And that's like the ideal way that things are supposed to work. And if you do that, then you have eternal life. You never got to die. You keep on going. There's a perfect frictionless system that never loses its energy, right? So that is, and I'm describing to you, of course, a utopia, an ideal. That's the type of partnership that you're supposed to have between physical and non-physical aspects of self. And there's a lot of static on the line. So, and also just want to make sure I'm showing you this, I'm heavy emphasis on this one over here. This other figure that I have over there to the left is also very accurate. You can see there's a central anthropomorphic or human-shaped figure. What is more accurate and maybe a little bit easier to see because it doesn't have all the colors is the idea that each chakra or energy center has, both a horizontal and a vertical axis. So this is it's more perfectly realized. Like I've got each energy center has a horizontal axis and also a vertical axis. So you can begin to see how all of these energy centers fit together. They're like nested water wheels. And there's also crucial ways in which they fit together. Like I'm going to make some little emphasis points, these little dots, where I'm making white dots here. These are emphasis points of where the energy centers, how they balance, how they fit together. So where we have the lower edge of one of these vortices fits on the upper edge of another one of these circles. So we have, it's exactly like having, any kind of interlocking gear system. You could think of it as water wheels, like the type of thing that would be a mill, for milling wood or something like that, with all of these complex gears that turn as the water flows through them. Or you could think of it as one of those old pachinko games with little steel balls that kind of go through different gears. The idea is that all of these aspects of self that are all you, because everybody makes this false distinction or erroneous distinction between your lower ego self that's so low. But you're low, but there's not a problem with being low. Yes, you are low. You are a low, no, you are a dense being. And then thinking like, oh, like that's so poopy. That's not bad. There's nothing wrong with being a low being. And you also comprise all of these other layers of self that are also you, because it's a false distinction. It'd be like, I'm the lowly sinner, you're the high up angel, tell me what to do. That's the old paradigm. And that also is an old approach, kind of like being a little kid, like, mommy, daddy, I'm just a stupid kid. You tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And of course, that has been fostered in humanity, that sense of disempowerment and being, infantile and childlike and not proactive in charge of your own life. So the whole idea is you learn about your own energy centers and you claim them as self. They are different aspects of self. They're a different level of consciousness than this yellow level, which is daily waking intellect. However, it is still you. And in level 2, I'm going to go even more extensively into the activities of what are the higher senses and what is it like when you become telepathic. But the idea is, I'm showing you where these guys meet and where they coincide and the way they all balance upon one another. So I'll go back to my face. So all of these aspects of self balance upon one another. So that means if you're building, a layer, like if you're building a house, and there's different layers of bricks and stone, and you don't get the bottom layer like completely settled right, then everything else that you put on top of there goes hinky-jinky. The whole thing is destabilized. That is truthful also of your energy centers, that your energy centers are all, they interact, they stack on top of each other, and the way that energy flows through them, they interact throughout the day, so that if you have imbalances in them, it affects the entire system. Friction in one part of the system affects the entire system. Imbalances affect the entire system. So there are questions. Let me go to the question. Brandon says in the drawing. Let me read this first. Okay, cool. Well, then I think perhaps it was a private question, so perhaps that has all become clear. Let me consult my notes for a moment to make sure that I'm saying everything properly. Okay, so the whole motivation for these two aspects of your own being to work together is staying alive, got a drink. And the idea is that you are both caretakers of this life. And this life is this bundle of possibilities and probabilities housed in and interconnected with this physicality moving through the time field. That if you don't do the right things, if you go too askew, if you fly off the edge of the road, drive off a cliff, then you lose the physical body. Physical body is no longer a viable container for consciousness. You're no longer in the time field. Everybody loses. That's the whole idea. That is the idea for what should ideally motivate these two aspects of self to work together. Because let's use an example of these two aspects of self not working together. Let's say the non-physical aspect of self says, sit quietly in meditation all day long and never go out and procure any physical nourishment or necessities of life. Like, your physical body will die very quickly because you need food and water and a little blanket or something to somehow stay warm. So that would be an unfair directive in the partnership. And it would also similarly be unfair if you focused so completely on the physicality and the mere, fulfillment of physical needs and none of the other more subtle levels of consciousness that include emotions. Like, we're basically talking about, the service to self beings that only focus on and justify their entire existence on just staying alive, staying alive, but nothing more than staying alive. That's not cool. That's not enough, because staying alive is the basis. And then on top of that, you have emotional experiences and intellectual. Here, red is staying alive. But on top of that, you have emotional experiences, intellectual experiences. You are emitting food, love. You're emitting love. You're emitting the tone of love. A lot of people understand at this point that humanity is being farmed like chickens. This is from the teachings of Carlos Castaneda, the humaneros. Instead of the chicken coops, you got human coops. And the idea that there's some malevolent otherworldly presence that is farming humanity for its vibration. And that's usually the vibration of stress, anger, grief, violence, something like the lower stuff. And I mean, like, yes, that is actually going on. The intention was that we would be emitters of love. We're part of this economy of love, or this food cycle, nourishment cycle of love, where love is sent out between various different beings and reflected back to one another. We're supposed to be emitters of love, not of these, distortions, not of these other emotions that have been what we are farmed for instead. So there's this ostensible partnership between your physicality and your non-physicality. Let's also say certain activities, as you are moving through the time field, foster love. They help you to stay in that frequency tone and to continue to emit that frequency tone. You know what makes me not be emitting the tone of love? When I have to do those stupid things on the phone. When it's like you call the bank. It's like, if you want this, press 1. If you want this, press 2. And I'm like, I'm emitting love. Like, if you want this, I feel like my love is floating away. Like, if I want this, press 17. If I want this, press 25. I'm like, I hate everything. Like, that's what I end up feeling like by the end of the phone call. I'm like, my love has evaporated away. I hate the world. I'm joking. I'm using like exaggerated hyperbole, but you understand and you can relate, because we all live in this crazy socioeconomic matrix where we are often asked to do things that are either uncomfortable with our minds or with our bodies in exchange for living in society or getting money. So mostly those are things that take us away from emitting that moment, that feeling of love. I know, don't worry, Joelle, I don't have to call the bank that often. It's usually only if there's some administrative error. And then you're like, not only do you have to call the bank, and you have to do this and press this and press this, and then you have to wait online while it plays this song that doesn't actually sound good while you really want to be doing something else. And like, this might sound like the smallest, most idiotic problem, because it's not like you're being chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex that's going to eat your eyeballs if it catches you. And it is still taking us away from our love, and that there are lots of things, problems, these modern problems, the problems of the modern world that basically take us away from that love tone. And the most badass thing you can do is to refocus continually on emitting that love and reconnecting with those other layers of self, those other aspects of self. So ideally, you're supposed to be in a partnership without any power struggles and without any conflicting agenda, where your non-physical aspects of self all give you the motivation, inspiration, and information necessary to continue to keep your physical body alive. Physical body stays alive. The non-physical beings are not allowed to treat your physical body like a disposable Kleenex. I wanted to say, Kleenex is a brand. Disposable tissue. You're not supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be like, oops, we killed the body. Oh, well, try again. Because you guys are in this class, and I've shown you in the diagram of the time field, and we'll talk about the different aspects of physicality and non-physicality. I'll go into that. But basically, the idea is, it would not be cool if these beings that are non-physical affected your mind so that you hit the membrane of death, like Pedro says, game over, try again, if they don't suffer. If they don't suffer, then it's literally like you, the Nintendo player, being like, okay, blah, 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 drive. Oh, I drove off a cliff. Oh, well, my little character died, but I didn't die. Nothing bad happened to me. That is not acceptable. You are not meant to be like the laboratory where they do trial and error and like horrible medical experimentation. Like, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. So that is not appropriate for the non-physical aspect of self to treat the physical body like some kind of a disposable object that can die and be brought back or resurrected or this or that. Like, no, all of the deaths are real. All the suffering is real. No one wants themselves to be killed. No one wants themselves to suffer and die. So now we have to get into those pesky occupiers of the interstices. Who are they, and what are the different aspects of self according to the time diagram that I draw all the time? Sometimes I try to do too many things at once. It's why you might notice my attention wavered for a moment. Okay, so let's draw this little diagram. Everyone who's in this class is painfully or wonderfully, ecstatically familiar with this diagram that I'm drawing at this point. But that's the time field. It is a time vortex. It is a diagram of the possibilities and probabilities of your life. And the area that I'm highlighting, let's make it in red, will be the membrane of death. So these areas over here, this is the membrane of death. So now we have to talk about define terms. If you're dead, then you're a little point of consciousness that is in that red squiggle zone. All right. If you're alive, then you're a little point of consciousness that is here in the green zone. I'm in the green zone. I'm alive. I'm staying alive, staying alive. And how about, what about if you're this blue guy? What about if you're this blue guy and you have managed to go up the central pole and climb out like Santa Claus and go to infinity? Who are you and what are you? So this is important because this has to do with who and what are your chakras, and who and what. I'm just consulting my notes. Okay. Yeah. Who and what are the chakras? Who and what is speaking to you from an otherworldly sense? So let's talk about what science defines as being alive. I define being alive as being in the green zone of this overarching diagram. Science defines it as being a cellular structure that metabolizes. That means food goes in, poop comes out, or some kind of thing like that, that responds to stimuli, and that can reproduce. And there are some biological creatures that do not conform to science's definition of what is alive, like a virus. According to science, a virus is semi-alive because viruses cannot metabolize. That means they can't eat. They can't go eat a big, giant, juicy hamburger and be like, that was so good. Now I'm full of sunlight energy, and now I'm ready to move my arms and legs and do stuff. Virus cannot do that. That's why virus needs a host. Virus gets inside of the host that ate all the delicious, juicy hamburgers and takes the hamburger energy and hijacks it and uses it to do what it wants to do. Same thing, virus cannot reproduce on its own. Virus needs a host to reproduce. So it is a biological creature, yes, but there are certain very telling things that the virus cannot do that it requires a fully biological host to achieve. If all of the biological hosts disappeared instantaneously, I snapped my finger, they're all gone, viruses would disappear also, almost instantaneously along with the hosts, because they can't eat, they can't reproduce, so they would all die out. So they have a type of partnership or dependency on the living, but it is a very, malevolent, unhealthy partnership, not part of the intended music of the symphony of life. And so now let's use as another example, there's viruses in the biological realm, then there are corporations. Might be a little bit hard for me to write this with this crazy pen, but you get the idea of what I'm writing down. Corporations, C-O-R-P, let's just write C-O-R-P, corporations. These are semi-alive beings that they have been given a sense of personhood here in this time and place. Like the Citizens United Supreme Court decision in the United States gave corporations some of the same rights and abilities that an actual embodied human, such as you or I, have. Corporation does not have a body. I'm pointing to my body. You guys can see my body on screen. I'm touching it right now. My body needs to eat. It needs to rest. It needs to, be cleaned in showers and baths. Corporations don't have bodies. They have constituents. They have shareholders. They have consumers who buy their stuff. They don't have bodies. And they are much more along the same lines as a virus. So it's totally not by accident that in this time and place where the occupiers of the interstices, let me change my color here, the guys who had guitars, they smashed their guitars on stage at the end of Atlantis. They turned on a fake Merkaba. They killed themselves. They killed themselves. They died horribly. And they are now stuck on the membranes. They live in the world in between worlds. And they are also analogous to the viruses and the corporations. In fact, they're very much hand in hand, tied to viruses and corporations. The occupiers of the interstices who are dead. Now there's so many different mental directions I want to go in. There are many different things that are trying to affect the people that are green, that are alive in the green zone. So the beings that are red in the red zone, I call them the peanut gallery. The pooties, the turds, refuse to flush. They are often speaking to the beings that are alive in the green zone, and they are causing perturbations. Like imagine you're like trying to ride your bicycle down the road and stay nice and steady, and a big giant wind like pushing you over, or someone, tries to push you to the side. And you're like, oh no, like now I'm going to drive off the road. That is exactly what those pesky occupiers of the interstices attempt to do. They come in to the mentality, to the perception through software vulnerabilities. the hacked human operating system and verbalized language, and they influence your trajectory where you are going through the time field with the intention of making you, instead of going nice up and down like this, with this bright green line, going to the side, so that you will so that you will die, so that you will go into the membrane of death. I wanted to say so that you will go to hell, but literally it is so that the energy of life will not successfully be refined out of this level of existence, and you will instead be stuck on the membrane of death and add to the economy of hell. Not to give undue attention to viruses and turds and crapola, there's also these wonderful beings who exist here. They are, in this diagram, blue, and these are eternal beings that actually didn't touch the membrane of death, and they have continuity of consciousness, and they know that they came from the source and infinity. They came into physicality. They stayed connected to the source the whole time they were in physicality. They knew who they were. They knew what they were doing. And then they went back to the source and physicality. And beings who are on that zone also can have an influence on the beings that are in the green zone in the alive world. So the idea is that you're supposed to be in this partnership with your own timelines, with your own chakras. I'll go back to my face, so that you can successfully make it through that little wormhole at the top and, quote unquote, win the video game. And that there are these other malevolent influencers that are in the sloping membranes on the side, that if you're trying to drive your car down the road safely, they're trying to pull you off to one side and pull you off to the other side. And that is essentially the challenge of what we're experiencing here in life. So you have your physicality and your non-physicality, and these are real partners that really love each other. Then you have the interlopers, the beings that attempt to come between you, to subvert that natural system, to cause friction and siphon off your life force energy, to create a divide between your physicality and your healthy chakras or energy centers or non-physicality, and also to make you eventually die, to basically waylay you endlessly on your journey and keep you from that reconnection. Let me now go back to questions. Okay. All right. Salu says, ha 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 ha, corpse, corporations. That was funny, Professor Lasagna. Thank you very much. Corpse, because they're dead. That's exactly right. It's the language tells that there's a lot of truthful stuff. If you look at the etymology and word structure of language, it's not by accident that corporations have in there the word corpse, and that this is our corporeality. So this is jumping ahead a little bit because it really is fully discussed in lesson 18, but we talk about it now quite openly in this class already. We've pulled off the Band-Aid. We're not hiding anything. But yeah, that's that whole envy, like a jealousy or an envy that the non-physical beings have, the occupiers of the interstices. They kind of are envious and jealous and hateful of you having a physical body. Our bodies are beautiful. I always say our beautiful, organic, multicellular bodies, because we've got life force energy. And those beings, they gave up their bodies. That's what I say, smashed their guitar on stage. They didn't lose their guitars in horrible, sad accidents. No, they didn't lose their guitars from disease. No, they intentionally smashed their guitars. And now they look longingly at your guitar. They're like, look, you've got strings, you can play. I wish I still had a guitar. And they kind of hate you and they hate themselves. They're like, I hate that I smashed my guitar. I hate that you have a guitar. I want to mess up your playing. That's their whole motivation. And I had to learn about that. People that are motivated in that way, because I'm not motivated in that way at all. I'm like, I love having a guitar. Let's all play together. Having a guitar is awesome. Like, I'm very differently motivated. So I had to learn about all of that. Beth says parasites, quote unquote, is the word that describes the overarching issue, both within and without, that we are dealing with multidimensionally. Really good distinction and clarity there. And I thank you for that. Yeah, so parasite, this idea of an organism that draws energy from another organism without giving back. Because love is a reflection, sending out and reflecting back, receiving back. Love, this tone literally happens when the sender and the receiver are both receiving. Like, that's the whole idea. The difference between making love and getting screwed. Like, when you're getting screwed, someone's being exploited. Someone is not getting back an equal amount of what they sent out. So the whole idea is there are consciousness parasites that have been taking more than they give out, they consider it to be a good investment. They're like, of course I'm going to get more back than I send out. Like, what do you think I'm doing here? You think I'm just in it for my health? It's like, yeah, that's actually because I'll get into this more in level 2, the idea of identity and who we are based upon all of these different energy centers that are coming together. So Lou says, Beth, true, but in some sense, they're also dead since they don't advocate to live in harmony. That is exactly right. The dead beings are parasites of the living. That is the way that this system is set up. And the parasites keep on making more parasites. They keep on making more dead people. They kill more and more and more people. And now I have to get into earth, death, cult, religion, not to alienate or criticize or condescend to anybody that has a faith. But the whole idea, like if your religion is telling you, take a perfectly healthy animal like an oxen or a dove or whatever, and put it on this altar and kill it. And then that's how you worship. And, like you say thank you to God by doing that. Like, no, that's not how you worship. Like that is how you send more energy to the membrane of death. So the religions that are all about either human or animal sacrifice are all about sending energy to those sloping membranes, not up the central core. And it is a dispersal of it's a disruption of the entire time field. And the problem with that is that the time field is like a tapestry where there's different threads that weave together, and the tapestry has integrity because all of the threads are strong and everything is, tied, all the knots fit together properly. And if you have either a thread that's very thin and easily breakable, or if you cut threads, or if you don't tie the knots properly, then the entire fabric structure starts to lose integrity. That is what has been happening in the time field. The entire time field is a metabolism. Just like we have a metabolism where food goes in and poop comes out and energy is expended by caloric energy, the time field also has a metabolism of consciousness flowing through this system, and the system doing stuff. Just like your body works and does stuff, consciousness flows through the system and the system does stuff. And when consciousness accumulates in the membranes of death, instead of having like a efficient system that works the way it's supposed to, you end up getting an inefficient system with tons and tons of friction. So it's the antithesis of love. Instead of making this tone, the entire system stops making that tone and starts to make a degraded type of horrible music. That's not what we're supposed to have. So I would say this and bring it around to this, what we're doing with Flying Rainbow Lasagna as we learn about this and master this as genetic virtuosos, heal the time field that you are a part of, like your little sector of reality. You heal that, and your healing connects to and emanates outward into all of these other sectors and causes healing in all of those other sectors. So, I like what Beth is saying. Beth says, she agrees with Salu. Yes, Salu, harmonize them into non-relevance. I really like that description because that is like what I spoke about in last week's level 2 presentation. Energy and entropy, to harmonize those consciousness residues into a state of non-relevance. This is different than saying like, I'm going to get a guillotine, I'm going to chop off your head and blood will flow through the streets. That is different than saying, I'm going to send you to a state of entropy. So let's say there's some evil consciousness residue, like a characteristic that's not supposed to, it's not divine. It doesn't last for forever. Something that is divine lasts for forever. Something that is a consciousness residue is temporal. It's temporary. It doesn't last for forever. And some of the very worst, qualitative, how do we describe this? But like, malevolent, evil, harmful, causing of suffering, those characteristics, they are not eternal characteristics. So what do you do when you find that characteristic? Do you chop it into chop your head off with a guillotine? We're going to make your blood run all over. That is not an effective solution. The solution is to send it to entropy, which is putting it into a state of frozenness, like Beth was saying, non-relevance. So Hans has something to say. He says, assumption. Awakening people are getting rid of their demons putis. I'm agreeing with you. Hans says the putis, or pesky occupiers of the interstices, then move to people who are more welcoming. We'll get into this. Making them more infested, making the world more polarized. What is truthful is so I'm kind of agreeing with, I'm definitely agreeing with you, but I want to make clarifications. Yes, that is what's happening. But I don't want you to think that it is an insurmountable problem. That's why I'm semi-agreeing. So yeah, let's say that you become a total badass warrior and you're like, no demons get to eat off of me anymore. No, you don't. The banquet is closed. No parasites, no eating here anymore. And I'm no longer a host for viruses or mind parasites in any way. The mind viruses and mind parasites, they're like, okay, we can't eat this one. Okay, so then you're exactly right. They do go on to the next one because they're still hungry. They will find a host. They will find a place to be, but not if you send them to entropy. So let's say the hungry thing is coming up to you. It's like, oh, I'm going to eat you. I'm very, very hungry. I can't eat you. You don't have to just be catch and release. You don't have to just be like, ha ha, go eat the next person. You can actually be like, hey, you're a consciousness residue. You're supposed to go to entropy, and you can be empowered like a deputy. You can be deputized by the cosmos to take the energy from that being that interacted with you and send the energy where it's supposed to go and essentially freeze that being. So that way it's like spot clean. Like you're like, oh, I just saw that there's this muddy footprint on the floor here. You don't have to just let it be. You can be like, I'll just grab a little dust rag. We'll just wipe that on up and boom. And that's the whole point of why did that being make itself aware to you? Make you aware of it. It's kind of like saying you were not aware of that consciousness residue until it came up to you, trying to bite you, right? And it could have not tried to bite you, or it could have tried to bite someone else. But it made you aware of its existence. And now that you're aware of its existence, you can actually do something about it. So that's a big thing. Like these are all it's ethical considerations. So yes, it would just be catch and release. Like, you're fishing. I'm fishing. I catch a fish. I'm like, oh, look, that's a fish. I take the hook out of it. I throw it back in. That's really, really frustrating because it just means like nothing ever happens. The demons keep on swimming around. Nothing ever gets resolved. So sending them to entropy is a big part of that. And you want to be like, Aurora, like, why should I send them into entropy? Who am I? First of all, you are God. You are part of this divine creature. You are part of the larger metabolic time field that you want to be healthy and alive. So you're helping to keep yourself alive by doing this. And also, so you're deputized to be able to do these things. Like you don't have to. There's this big thing of like, there's a big erroneous. Let me just drink a little bit here. Erroneous assertion that you're just supposed to sit there and do nothing. No, the whole idea of being in the physicality is to be empowered. Like I was saying about the chakras on your body that are non-physical beings. Those non-physical beings, you are the driver in the driver's seat. You are empowered. And also, the second part, I'll get into these questions, but the second part of lesson 4 of level 1 is a teaching all about food. So someone had emailed me. I'm apologizing because I get inundated with so many emails. I didn't respond verbally, so I hope that they find this video because I have lost the email at this point. They wanted to know, Aurora, like, what should I eat? What should I not eat? And I do not want to even open up that can of worms because we had a lot of conversations that are respectful and loving in this class. There's a lot of passion that people have about their own particular dietary choices. And I never impose my dietary choices on someone else because I eat what's right for me and I have an anomalous human body. So I would recommend everybody eat what is, exactly, right for them. And the answer that I wanted to give to the person that was asking for guidance about their diet. So like, I don't tell humans how to take care of their body because like, I'm still figuring out how to take care of a human body and I do what works for my body, but what works for me does not necessarily work for everyone. What I wanted to say, though, is that the real teaching is it is not about, it is about the quality of nutrition, because I highly recommend that everybody stay away from and avoid the genetically modified ingredients. And that is pretty much in all processed food at this point, that there are genetically modified, corn products that are put into almost everything. So if you want to not, and why should I not eat genetically modified stuff? Because if you are playing beautiful music with the perfectly well-tuned instrument of your guitar of your body, and you put a bunch of genetically modified food into it that sounds like this, that is not playing a good melody, and that will cause your perfectly tuned strings to get out of tune. If you eat food that is out of tune, you will become out of tune too. So I say avoid the GMO stuff like the plague, and also to try to consume organic food, because the non-organic stuff is mostly sprayed with glyphosate, which is another thing that affects DNA's natural behavior and makes horrible music in your body. So avoid the GMO stuff and avoid the glyphosate. that aside, so, basically what you want to do when you're eating is eat food that contains a lot of consciousness. So make good food choices to begin, because eating is a refinement process. So your chakras are refineries. So what we are doing when we eat, remember, you're in the driver's seat. You own the mouth. You get to eat the delicious food. And then the chakras, or non-physical aspects of self, the energy centers, time body, benefits from what you have eaten. But you can't just eat unconsciously. So you do have to eat food that has good ingredients, but then you have to eat it in a conscious way. So in level 2, I'm going to talk more about the higher faculties and the attention. But what you basically need to do is focus your attention on your food. Like, let's say this is my food and I'm going to eat my delicious, good sandwich that I made for my meal. So this is your part of your higher faculties. You have your brow chakra and then you have your crown chakra, and the two coincide. They come in at 90-degree angles, right? And they meet in the center of your head. And what emanates outward from that central meeting point is a tendril. And that tendril is part of your energetic anatomy. And I'm going to speak all about this in level 2, and I'll get to the questions that are in the chat. That tendril is a sensory apparatus that we use. It's for your extrasensory perception. Let's say that you are placing your tendril of attention on the television when you are eating your delicious food. I'm eating my food, it's so good, but I'm busy watching something else. I'm not even paying attention to my food, the tastes, the sensations, and the nutrients that are in the food. So you're supposed to be able to, the whole point is to not just sense with your tongue whether the food has good nutrition in it, but also to sense with your ESP. What's in this food? Should I be eating it? Is it safe, first of all? And second of all, does my body need or require these nutrients? And how much of them are required? And you're supposed to be broadcasting that experience to the sun and the stars. I'm pointing at our very overcast sky. The sun's up there somewhere and wants to know what it's like when you eat your wonderful, delicious food, because it's a gift. The sun gives you your food as a gift. Here's the tomatoes, here's the apples, here's the whatever. The sun helped to grow pieces of its own body. And then as you eat them, you're supposed to transmit back to the sun, hey, this is what the experience of ingesting these wonderful nutrients is like. That's that love tone. That's that rapport. Sun sends out some melody to you, and you eat the melody and send it back to the sun, and you're making music with the sun. And if you are doing that in the right way, you're not hugely fat and you're not hugely skinny. You're just right. You are getting the right amount of nutrients and achieving homeostasis and sending the energy back to the sun. And so the real answer is, it's because this is the second part of lesson 4 of the level 1 stuff. Food nutrients matter. Attention really matters. So when we eat food, the best practice that we can do until we become completely light eaters, until we no longer require the intermediary of, a tomato or whatever, a salmon to become food that we can then eat. The best thing to do is to focus our attention on the food when we actually eat it. It is a way of honoring that food. So I know it can be hugely challenging because our world right now, our modern world, is literally set up to distract your attention, to not have you focused on whatever activity you're doing, whatever it might be, even if it is food. So there's all these different things. There's the phone, there's the computer, there's everything that is out there to make you pay attention to something else other than your body processes and your sensations of eating food. So it's one of the most radical diet plans you can follow. And as you begin following this, plan, as you focus on your food more. So first of all, what you're doing is you are creating a broadcast, a love tone for the more subtle aspects of your body that you are meant to feed with your physical body. This does not mean feed demons, which is why you can tell I'm being so careful and so conscientious about my word choice. So reach beyond my words, please, and tap into my intention, which is the idea that you, as a physical embodied being, slowed down light, like material being, are here eating physical food that tastes so yummy, that you are broadcasting that food and that experience to the non-physical aspect of self that is purely made of photons and light and time. That's ideal. That's what's supposed to be happening. But understanding that a lot of this has been hijacked, or there have been interventions where something else comes along and takes your energy. Instead of having a direct broadcast where you're broadcasting the experience to the sun, there's something else that comes along and takes that energy instead. So a lot of this is about creating really, really clear, like mental firewalls, energetic barriers that make sure like you are getting your connection directly to the source, and that you're not getting anything else like siphoning off your energy away. So that's the whole thing with using encryption, learning how to focus, learning how to do all these things. So what I found, the more that I focused on my food and the more that I ate high quality food, I accreted light. And accrete, it's like the process of how a galaxy is formed. Dust and gas comes together. It's like a blob. It kind of comes together. And the more that it comes together, the more that it gravitationally draws into itself. So the more light that I started to eat, because again, I came here as Aurora about 17 years ago. And at first, when I explored food, ate all the things that people eat in this time and place. I didn't know about different food qualities or anything like that. And I had to learn which are the right food choices and how to eat in the right way. And now, when I eat my food, like I am focused on my food, I'm enjoying it, I'm bringing in all that light. And I really feel that these mental programs that are about food guilt are ways of saying, I'm not allowed. Like as you're eating your food, that your mind and your feelings are saying things like, I'm not allowed to have this food. Like, oh, this food caused so much pollution. Oh, so many acres had to be chopped down for this food to be grown. Oh, I'm not allowed to eat a cow. Oh, I'm not allowed to do this. And I think all of those are mentally implanted programs that do that siphoning off, which is why I am not an advocate for any of these extremely restrictive diets that are about what you're not allowed to eat. And people who know me, they know that I do not eat processed sugar and carbohydrates and things like that. I'm dealing with this, neurological disorder that makes me more sensitive to carbohydrates. So that is why I eat low glycemic. If I eat carbohydrates, I pair it with fats and protein. But I don't say I'm not allowed to have things in the world. I'm allowed to have things in the world. That's the whole thing. Like you're here, you have a body. You're supposed to have a body. So you're not supposed to starve yourself to death. You're not supposed to eschew food to the point of death. That mental program is an erroneous mental program that would come from harmful beings, not loving chakras, not loving energy centers that are in a partnership with you that want your body to stay alive for forever. This is the whole point. So now let me press pause on everything that I'm saying, go into all the comments. I'll finish up level 1 and we'll go on to level 2. Okay, good. You're all wonderful. Beth, it has a wonderful comment. She says, love is mutual. That is exactly right. As I was preparing for class today, I was thinking about how to describe this. And really, love is a form of partnership. And you do require some kind of a partner, something. It could be a tree or a microbe. It requires some other aspect of self. You send something out, I love you, and you have that love reflected back. It says, I love you too. And that is, we are feeding each other. When people send me notes or messages, they write, I love you. I say, thank you. And I'm sending it back because it's literally a food. We feed each other with that food. Roxanne, good to see you. She says, we are healing a huge infection in creation. Yes, that is exactly what is going right. It is and I love your insight. It is exactly like there's a viral infection or a pathogenic infection in the time field itself. So that's pretty big because I don't want anyone to think that like we just got problems down here on Earth, and down here on Earth people have, whatever infections in their bodies and there's disease, but everyone else in every other planet, on every other place, like everyone there is fine and everyone is completely perfect and great and no one ever has no, that is not what's going on. There's actually a huge infection. There's pathogenic disease and pathogenic mind infection on this planet, on many other planets of this solar system, and many other star systems throughout this galaxy and in many other galaxies. And that might be like not a very fun, happy, hooray, Aurora, there's a giant pathogenic infestation every place. Like, that's not so great. My shoulders go down. So yeah, but on the other hand, like, you're not alone. It's not just on this planet. But on the other hand, it's a pretty big thing to clean up. And think about it in terms of your own body. If you have a systemic infection in your own body, it really only takes a few cells to be able to create the antigen and say, hey guys, we got the antidote, and start pumping out that antidote to the rest of the cells. And then they all get it through the blood supply and they say, hooray, hooray, we've got the antigen. That's what our planet is doing. And that's what each one of us can play that role of being like the producer of the antigens, being like, guys, I've taken a survey and I know that there's evil and I know what it looks like. Here, like, distribute the flyer. If you see this evil, don't accept it. Kick it out of your planet. And that's what we're doing with our minds. Hans says, are there more pooties than living people? I think that there are. I think the answer is yes. Like, I don't know how to do an exact survey, but from my estimations, like the occupiers of the interstices have been occupying interstices before the fall of Atlantis on this planet, like before the fall from grace on this planet. So for longer than 10 or 20,000 years, they've been occupiers of this interdimensional realm. And in the past 10 or 20,000 years, just on this planet, think of all of the organisms that have died, human, non-human, animal, plant, microbe. That's a lot of death. That's a lot of death energy on the membranes of death. And there hasn't only been death on this planet. I'm drinking. There was death on Mars. There was death on Venus. There was death on Mercury. There's been a lot of death in the solar system. There's been a lot of death in this entire galaxy. There's a lot of dead people. There's a lot of dead people. There's a lot of that energy to resolve. And I'm saying this with a smile, but it's like, there's a lot of muddy footprints. So what that means is we need a very large bucket and a very large mop and do an industrial cleaning of the whole thing, because you're not going to scrub that out with like a little toothbrush. You're not going to do that. We're going to have to do big, giant cleaning. So that's part of what we're experiencing on this planet and radiating outward, big, giant cleanup. Beth says, I like to think of it as a cloud that dissipates with the sun. That is beautiful. And Carrie, I'm not sure if I know you before. If you're new, then welcome. Carrie, you must be new, she says. Or Carrie, he says, how do you send them to entropy? Dun, dun, dun. So this, you can check out, it's a level 2 teaching. It's from last week, and I talk all about this extensively. The flying rainbow lasagna as an oscillation of this shape, where we have the central source that begins to oscillate or move up and down or superposition. And half of the time it is positioned at energy, totality, beingness. Half of the time it is positioned at entropy, which is non-being, which is coldness, frozenness, a lack of awareness, not being in existence, not being in time. How do you send something to entropy? So part of this will be discussed in level 2. It has to do with your attention. I described the tendril of your attention. Whatever you touch on with this tendril, which is kind of like a long elephant's trunk or like a long sensory organ or something like that, you give energy to it and you get energy from it. You focus on things with your attention when you think about them or when you attend to them. So you can think about them verbally or non-verbally. Like if I ask everyone, please focus your attention on a purple kitten. And if you're going to do that, then right now everyone is putting their invisible tendril of attention on their own inner projection of a purple kitten. And you're sending energy to that image, to that thing, to that concept. You can do the same thing in reverse. If you take energy and attention away from a purple kitten. So what do these pesky occupiers of the interstices do? What do these turds do? They beg for attention all the time. They say, I'm going to punch you in the face. I'm going to intrude in your thoughts. I'm going to do this and that. I'm going to grab you by the lapels and shake you around. I want attention from you. So you don't give them attention. You take attention away from them. You take thought energy away from them. So you could envision it kind of like that Ghostbusters movie where they've got a big giant stream, and the stream is like an industrial vacuum cleaner, energetic vacuum cleaner. My energetic vacuum cleaner is not giving energy to you, is taking energy away from you, is making that being, if you envisioned it, go like become paler and paler and less opaque and less substantive until all of the light and awareness and beingness of it is gone. And it's frozen. It's not in existence anymore. And what I then envision through this vacuum cleaner of cosmic energy and awareness is that instead of having to open up the dust bag and dump it into the trash, that it gets instantaneously sent to where it's supposed to be, because all of these beings, they steal their energy. They steal their energy, send it back to the people that they stole it from. And that's how you empty out the vacuum cleaner bag. Salu says, how do you send, Salu's answer to how do you send them to entropy is evolve your own consciousness. And that is also truthful. That is like becoming invulnerable to bites. You can't bite me because I evolved my consciousness. So snap in your direction. Carrie says, can you do it for other people? The answer is yes. You are deputized. Welcome to the class. I hereby deputize you as an agent of Flying Rainbow Lasagna, an extension of the source consciousness. You're down here. You're a first-person experiencer. You're not here merely to have your butt kicked and be eaten and be victimized. No, you're actually here to be like, the buck stops here, and you don't get to kick me around. You don't get to kick that guy around either. You're absolutely allowed to intervene on someone else's behalf if you see that they're being pumped away by evil things. Be like, no, you're not allowed to, and you're allowed to suck energy away. So, early in my time here as Aurora, I ended up finding myself in a lot of haunted places. Like, it wasn't intentional at all. Maybe I had a lot to learn, but I found myself in a lot of places where it's like, oh, there's a consciousness residue. There's a consciousness residue. And I learned the best thing that I could do for these beings, a lot of whom did not understand that they were dead, was to inform them that they were dead and that they should not be just walking around in the same old boring circles that they walked in life, but that they were free and that they could go. So what I did when I had to be in those types of spaces is I cleared the space so you can use sage or any other type of clearing herb. And a big thing also is that all of the furniture had been left behind. Like these two people died, they left their furniture behind. It was an estate sale, and I was house sitting in this house that was totally filled with ghosts, and the name on the door had not been changed. They literally didn't know that they were dead. So I took their name off the door. I staged the place. I said to them, hey, you guys are dead. Stop hanging around here. Like, you gotta go somewhere else. So that is like the loving way that you can do when you just find loving consciousness residues. But when you got beings that are trying to like eat you, like, they're not just hapless, lost little ghosts. Like, they're evil, and you gotta suck their energy away, and sometimes forcefully, because they don't always, they're bullies. They don't always go nicely. Joelle says, Aurora, I've really noticed that when I become really conscious in experiencing my food, that there are foods that I really just want to spit out and realize how I really don't want that thing I'm eating. I think that's wonderful. I think that's perfect. That is what is supposed to happen. That's why I don't give anybody else dietary advice. Each one of us is supposed to have this amazing calibrated system. Your mouth that senses here and your inner insight that senses here, that determines what is the ideal nutrition for your body and when. Like, some people should eat a giant meal first thing in the morning. Some people need to wait until 12 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I ain't going to tell anybody else what to do or when to eat. Like, literally, just as a very brief aside, when I first got my little dog, I'm like, we're going to do all raw everything. And I like made her eat all, raw food because I read about it. It's the best stuff and everything. And like, it ended up being not the ideal food for her tummy. She needed like some vegetables, some cooked food, some this and that, to have like, the right balance for her own tummy. So I learned like not to be formal, not to be stuck in the expectation, to go with what the body actually asks for. So if you're doing that, then that's probably the ideal thing that you need to do for your body. And that's what I would encourage everyone to do. Sometimes you might want to eat meat and animal products. Sometimes you might not wish to. So that's like, and please, I ask for other people, please don't judge me. I eat meat, I eat animal products, and I intend to eat what my body asks for up until the time that I, transcend the need for physical food at all. And I think we're getting there. At a certain point, we will all be sun gazers. We will all be breatharians. Up until that point, let's be loving of one another in our biological diversity and allow each other to eat what is right without judgments and animosity. Like that whole thing of like trying to fight against someone else because of their diet does not feel loving to me. So Lou says, but of all the people who have hit the death membrane, died, wouldn't some of them have allowed their residues to dissipate onto entropy fairly quickly and subsequently find a new birth within hours, therefore not adding to the Pooty world? Really great thinking. So here's what happens. Unfortunately, a lot of people who hit the death membrane, they get stored up in a jar. Like I'm thinking if I have any little mason jars or whatever here, just imagine here. They get stored up in a jar, like this jar of blue paint. Oh, and you know what? I put the cover on here so that the paint stays fresh. They do that in hell. I'm sorry to inform you that they can kill a person, they can zap their body, they can zap them out of their body, they can control their consciousness, they can make you live in a particular area of the time field called hell, and they can prevent your slow dissolution. They can keep you jarred up, keep you fresh. This is 100% fresh human consciousness. We harvested this, 1,500 years ago, and it's still nice and fresh in there. So that person living in the little jar might think that they might be like in a pocket world. Time might be moving more slowly to them. This is like horrible to understand because you understand the levels of exploitation of consciousness that have been going on up until this point. So yeah, you can die. You can be put into a world that is not a real world, but is a simulation. And you can live out 50, 60, 100 years, 75 years. Let's say you get killed as a little tiny infant, like in some kind of an actual ritual, and you get jarred up in your jar. then you can live for 50, 75, 100 years on the membrane of death. Meanwhile, not slowly dissolving and going back to your, potential, and then being put back together. So yes, eventually beings that go to the membrane of death will go to a state of total entropy. They will melt away. But that's the imprisonment, that they get stuck there and they don't get a chance to have the levels of introspection and self-awareness that are necessary to go to entropy. That when you die, if you're a good person, you're not trying to stay as a demon and feed off of the living. But so you're a good person and you don't get put into a jar and sealed up hermetically. Then at a certain point, you go through your experience. You're like, wait a minute, I think I'm dead. Wait a minute, my name isn't Joe Smith anymore. Wait a minute, I don't still do the same things that I did when I was alive. Maybe it's time for me to let go of that ego structure. Like, wait, maybe it's time for me to take off my Joe Smith identity and not be that thing, and then be free to be something else, right? That's the whole idea. You go through that learning process. But the pesky occupiers of the interstices, they bottle people up and they save them like a fine wine. And they're like, no. You're not going to go through your personal refinement process and understand that you're dead and look at introspect on your life and think about all the things that you did. No, you're not going to do that at all. You're just going to stay bottled up as the person that you are with no movement or transformation or rectification. So that's it's horrible, because that's not what's supposed to happen. And that's the level of imprisonment that has been experienced. And the solution is flying rainbow lasagna. I go to those guys that are stored up in a jar, and I'm like, you don't have to be stored up in a jar anymore. Lasagna your way out of the jar. And that then begins to allow that consciousness to flow again. It's like unlocking something with an enzyme, becomes enzymatically unlocked, and then the energy can flow again. So I'm sorry to report that truth to you. I really appreciate your clear thinking and the direction that your question came from. Pedro says, I've been visualizing Merkabahs on my skin cells as armor against Pooties and 5G and the nasty stuff. Awesome job. I'm happy that you do that. And I do something similar. I do a whole body protection, and I do individual cellular structure protection, and I do individual protection of any part of my body that might, be vulnerable. Like I stepped on a twig and I had a little cut on my foot. I put a Merkabah around that little cut so that stuff wouldn't get in there. So whatever is your personal vulnerability, you can put Merkabahs around that. And I applaud that practice. So Lou says, keep visualizing until it actually energetically happens, Pedro. Practice makes perfect. I completely agree. Pedro says, I don't stop there. I actually put Merkabahs on all of my cells. Do it. I do that too. I do that for me. I do that for my little dog. I think I told you about the practice. I do Merkabahs around every single one of the photons that are coming from the sun. May you go where you need to go and not get waylaid on your path. Keep going in the right direction. So Lou says, this jar thing makes me very angry. It should. It absolutely should. Totally unfair. It's totally against cosmic law and is part of what motivated me to invent the flying rainbow lasagna and come up with solutions, because it is totally not acceptable. And the jar thing, jarred up, it is part of DNA. It is like having a sample of DNA of a rare being that they then think we can take snippets of that DNA and do interesting things with that. So understand the idea of the jar consciousness is also analogous to having DNA samples of all these different organisms. If we want to take a scoop of this DNA and a scoop of this DNA for these type of very unethical technology-based genetic Frankenstein doctors. Carrie says, what are thoughts on reincarnation here? So I was speaking about this in last week's presentation about the time vortex. The idea that when I talk about being dying and being reinserted in the time vortex down here at the bottom, that is reincarnation or reinsertion or refinement of consciousness within one life experience. So that is different than the idea of having a serial or linear experience of being reincarnated. First, I lived 1,000 years ago, then I lived 500 years ago, then I lived 100 years ago, because that is not the way that reincarnation happens. All of those incarnations actually happen concurrently, and they each exist as one of these dimpled time vortices. So here in this diagram, you actually see 4 lives intertwined. I'm going to get more into this in level 2, so stay tuned for level 2. Pedro's got a good question. He says, can we break the jar with the FRL maybe? Yes, absolutely. That's my practice, and I would encourage everyone to do it. Yeah, breaking the jars also is like taking away the batteries, because the jars, the people in the little jars, thinking that they're living regular lives, not knowing that they're stuck in a pocket world on the membrane of hell. That's what powers all of these non-impressive clank metal spaceships. And when you break the jars, crash, 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 and all the fine wine goes everywhere, it's basically like all of those spirits fly, all of those souls and consciousnesses all of a sudden fly, and they float to where they're supposed to go. All of their clank metal spaceships start falling out of the sky, and they can't go anymore. So I laugh, snorkel, like, oh, sorry, did you lose your battery pack? Did you lose your dilithium crystals? Sorry. Like, I'm not really sorry at all. Salu, in response to Carrie, says, Carrie, it's all happening at the same time concurrently. Salu knows the deal. Salu is a wonderful participant. Teddy says, my mother passed earlier this year. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, Teddy. Is there a way I can know if she is moving on or stuck? I cannot answer that. There's complexities in that I do not know. So I don't know how to answer. It's inevitable that everyone will eventually, ascend, transcend, and move on, but I don't know about her personal journey. So I'm sorry, I cannot give you an answer on that. Chloe says, is this what the Egyptians knew with mummification? You got it, girl. You totally got it. So Egyptians were ancient Egypt was part of the beginning of trying to create some kind of technological structure to create a type of ascension. Egyptian culture and the resurrection or funereal traditions that came out of that were a direct response to, hey, nobody used to die, we used to all ascend. And now all of a sudden we actually die and leave behind stinking, putrefying corpses. What are we supposed to do? So what the ancient Egyptians decided was that if they can waylay or severely make slower the decomposition, putrefaction process, that change of state from physicality to non-physicality, that they can extend their journey in the membranes of death, and that they didn't consider that to be being imprisoned in a jar. They considered it to be a good thing. And I will just say, it is not my tradition to do that. I would recommend that everybody go for total freedom, not to try to be mummified or preserved. It's just like pressing pause on your consciousness. It doesn't really solve things. And I can answer that more extensively. I just want to go through the rest of these questions. Carrie says, Sulu, oh, for sure, I guess then, how did I choose my current body or how I appear at this present time? So there's a complex answer to that. It's your present position has to do with the many, many layers of many, many timelines and decisions all adding up to this focal point of this moment now. So Lou says, I don't know those answers precisely, but from what I do know, there's an energetic connection. Yeah. Cece says, keeping us stored in a jar, I recently read we're worth more to them dead than alive. That's exactly right. And it is why abortion exists. It is why satanic ritual abuse exists. It is why death cult religion exists, going all the way back to ancient Sumeria, where it's like, you must burn your child to the god Moloch. It's like, it means you're giving Moloch whatever, 50, 60, 70, 100 years worth of the energy of the potential life of your child so that it can eat off of it in the membrane of death. Like, that is, it's horrible. I'm sorry. This is a very dark topic. It's horrible. It's not cool. Salu's talking with Carrie. Okay, cool. Cece says, thank you. Horrific as it is, it makes much sense. Yeah, that's it. I don't pull any punches. I tell everybody the truth here. Chloe says, then why is suicide frowned upon? Government and religion prevent suicide. They supposedly prevent suicide, or supposedly you're not supposed to kill yourself. However, it is presented culturally as you are lauded, like many people who kill themselves and die young are celebrated. A lot of the structure is set up to say, like, suicide is like the way out. That they think, like, oh, that's just the last thing you can do. And some cultures do kind of not celebrate, but let's say honor and respect suicide as a personal choice. And I'm thinking, the Japanese culture of the Far East, where even, the idea of the monks that sometimes have burned themselves alive, that is considered more of like a valid personal choice, as opposed to something that is a mortal sin as the Catholic Christian Church presents it. But when we're talking about suicide, oh, here, look, we got a little wagon tail. Come on up. You can do it. Come on up. There we go, guys. Look, right on time. boss knew that it was time for level 2. Sometimes suicide comes in the form of nutritional degradation, addiction to pharmaceuticals. Like sometimes suicide is not just a person specifically killing themselves with guns or knives. Suicide can also be very destructive life choices. And when we look at things like rock and roll stars and they live fast and they die young or crash their cars or whatever, it's like that is also, it's a death culture in encouraging suicide. Oh, thank you, Chika. You have a huge fan club. Everyone is totally celebrating that you have decided to get out of bed and come to work. Pedro says suicide in ancient Japan is more associated with honor. I think, yeah. Okay, guys, wonderful questions. Let me stop the recording so it won't be too long to upload level 1. Let me move on to level 2, where I'm going to speak extensively all about attention and this the higher faculties and how this all works. Wait, Chloe says, I thought that the food source of misery would feed the demons. That's why suicide is not allowed. When you kill yourself, you go to the membrane of hell and they keep on eating you on the membrane of hell. So everything that they eat from you when you are alive, that's just a little snack. And then what they get after you go to hell, that's like your super long banquet. And it's interesting, there was just a little orb or something that flew around. I could see it on the screen. Anybody who wants to can check out. It was right when I mentioned the word suicide. So on that note, we'll just end level 1 for right now. Please stick with me for level 2. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions.